Welcome to Wrestling Report. On our news for today we have, more WWE Office cuts were made this week, no Survivor Series, a WWE superstar had a mental breakdown, will Roman Reigns return, why Tony Khan gave credit to CM Punk, and more. More WWE Office cuts were made this week. WWE released several wrestlers from the main roster and NXT 2.0 on Thursday evening, including Karrion Kross, Eva Marie, Keith Lee, and more. WWE also made more Office cuts this week. Fightful reports the cuts weren't done as a way to reduce the number of employees they have, but rather the roles the people who were let go will be filled with new hires. Laura Petroselli, who worked for the company for over 9 years, was let go after being WWE's vice president of branding. She managed a $13 million budget annually. John Stamatis had been working as the SVP of Global Marketing and Sales Strategy for over 4 years. Before that, he had been in the marketing departments for the NBA, Pepsi, and other companies. He has been in that line of work for nearly 30 years. Laura Todd was the vice president of partnership marketing since October 2007 and spent over 14 years with the company. Finally, Mike Jocko was let go. He's best known to fans as the employee who won the WWE 24/7 Championship in 2019, only to lose it to R-Truth. As noted, Stan Stansky was let go from the company. With Stansky's departure, his exit was described by someone in WWE as so shocking that it was the ultimate proof no one is safe, and that this is another reminder this isn't the same company it was a year ago. Will we have Survivor Series this year? It was noted in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter that there has been no promotion yet for the Survivor Series pay-per-view, even though it's scheduled for just over 2 weeks from now. It is assumed that the top matches will feature WWE Champion Big E against Universal Champion Roman Reigns and SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair against Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch, but there has been very little talk about those matches on TV. The Women's Champion vs. Champion match was briefly mentioned during the title exchange segment, and there was a brief face-to-face between Big E and Reigns a few weeks ago. In the original ads for the show, it was mentioned that there would be Raw vs. SmackDown brand matches, so it looks like they are staying with the brand rivalry theme this year. Meltzer noted in The Observer that the mentality within the company is that they push the Crown Jewel show as hard as they could, and what is most important right now is to put over new feuds and to have the new rosters settle on television before eventually pushing the pay-per-view in the final weeks. Big E is currently in a feud with Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens on Raw, and Reigns has not mentioned Big E on SmackDown. Meltzer added how UFC has shown that the last few days of hype show that you don't need to do much more to drive interest to a pay-per-view event, but the difference between UFC and WWE is that has real sports media coverage to generate buzz, and they get a lot of coverage from ESPN. Nia Jax says she was on a mental breakdown. Nia Jax issued a statement on her Instagram account about her WWE release. She noted that she was on a mental health break and she recently asked for more time off after WWE sent her the schedule for her return to the ring. Jax also noted that her vaccination status was never mentioned to her and she was not given any options or choices on the matter. And she stated, "I usually keep my personal life private, but yesterday's reports leave me with no option but to clarify matters. I recently took a short leave of absence from WWE for a mental health break. I've been working through so much more than I can share, and so I took some time, with the full support of the company, to take care of myself." Earlier this week, after WWE sent me my schedule to return to the ring for the November 15 show, I asked for an extension to my mental health break, feeling that I needed more time, and hoping I would have the ongoing support of the company I have given my all to for the past 7 years. I did not receive a response. The next I heard, I was being released. My vaccination status was never mentioned. I wasn't given any choices or options. It breaks my heart to be so abruptly let go without consultation when dealing with so much privately. I loved my career at WWE, I love the men and women I worked with, and I am going to need time to process this huge loss. I appreciate those people who have shown understanding and compassion during an incredibly difficult time." Will Roman Reigns return? WWE has started to announce things for tonight's episode of SmackDown. A singles match between Shayna Baszler and Naomi has been confirmed for the show. Also, after taking a week off, WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns will be back on television to comment on the storyline suspension of Brock Lesnar. Reigns was at last week's SmackDown as he worked the dark match after the show went off the air. Sheamus could make his return to television on this show, as he is scheduled to work the UK tour later this week. He's been on the sidelines after he underwent another surgery for his broken nose. As noted, WWE is bringing in 2 NXT stars to work a dark match before tonight's SmackDown goes live on Fox from Evansville, Indiana at the Ford Center. Why did Tony Khan give credit to CM Punk? Tony Khan did an interview with Wade Keller for PooTorch.com on Friday. The interview was conducted before AEW Rampage, and Khan talked about some of the changes to EU Dynamite, the booking process, CM Punk's impact on business, what the EVPs do behind the scenes, and a lot more. How quickly EU became a full-fledged wrestling company, Tony was asked. And he was like, not just a full-fledged wrestling company, Wade, but really, there's a lot of the top sports leagues right now that we outdraw. Yeah. And people talk about these big hot sports leagues, and right now AEW outdraws a lot of major sporting events on a weekly basis. So to your point, you're absolutely right. And I give TNT a ton of credit for this, because there was a very devoted hardcore fan base. And before I got directly involved, there were I think about 50,000 people that bought all in, which is really strong and as good as any pay-per-view. At that point Impact, which had been probably the number 2 company for 18 years, 17 years at that point, they had never done a number that good. And if they'd done it, I think it was probably once for the Kurt Angle Samoa Joe cage match, I think was pretty close. But, our pay-per-view numbers are all double or more of that. And our TV numbers are amazing. And I think a lot of that came when TNT did that great campaign to help build awareness for us, and then EU. We had a lot of the great wrestlers that you saw in Ring of Honor and in New Japan, and on that particular All-In show that you were at and I was at, but also tried to build a deeper roster and bring in star power from the beginning, with Chris Jericho announced, and then on the first show Jon Moxley showing up as the big surprise. And from then on, just continue to add star power and build. And really, I look around in the company as in some ways, really all positive ways. Honestly, if you're the owner of the company, and if you're a fan of the company, it's so unrecognizable compared to the company we started with. It's pretty unthinkable. Looking around seeing CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, Ruby Soho, Thunder Rosa, all these awesome people that weren't with us when we started, and Malachi Black and then Andrade Elidolo, and new faces, and even the people that came in last year, Sting and FTR, Matt Hardy, and so many people have joined us along the way from where we started. So pretty cool. A second question Khan was asked on people trying to discredit CM Punk's impact on EU's business. And he was like, our numbers are so much better than they were, going into the last few months, and there's been an unquestionable lift since CM Punk came in. For some reason I see people trying to discredit Punk all the time, that he hasn't been a huge lift to our business. And he has been, and he's only scratching the surface. I have intentionally, in working with him, tried to hold back a lot of these marquee things, biggest marquee matches and stories. Tonight, we are going to get into some of that. Eddie Kingston is here in St. Louis, and he is healthy, he is ready to be here. And I want to see Punk and Eddie Kingston tonight face to face in that ring. And I am very excited going forward and maybe at Full Gear to see them lock up, and I believe that is a match fans want to see, and we've been getting Punk reintegrated, building the winning streak. And I think it's worked great. And again, when you look at the rating we did for our first Wednesday back, that was a really strong number last week, and he was such a huge part of it, kicking the show off and wrestling through the entire first segment in a great match. So he's just lifted our business so much, and I see people constantly really petty stuff trying to discredit him, and it's ridiculous because he's done so much for us. Then Khan was asked how much credit does CM Punk get for the record buy rate for AEW All Out. And he said, Double or Nothing was about as good a pay-per-view at that time as we could do this year. It was the first pay-per-view in wrestling in over a year that had a fuller outdoor stadium and thousands of fans going nuts, and it was all pretty surreal to watch Double or Nothing this year, and it was just a great show. And it did great numbers, and that in Revolution, our first 2 shows of the year will way up from the year before. But they weren't the kind of numbers we did for All Out. All Out, the first time we've ever hit over 200,000. And there was clearly a ton of interest in Punk's return to the ring.